for them. I've got a wedding coming up to do favors, so I'll open a barrel and reheat and do that route, and it keeps it fresh.
So I could boil it again in my kitchen if it's been sitting in the back of the fridge for.
Yeah, and you know, there's times where, people, every once in a while will get like a plastic cork come back with some mold on it. And it's just because it wasn't sealed properly. It's all cooked, but I mean, if you Google it, they'll tell you, scrape the mold off, reheat it, and put it back in the jar. Because there's nothing wrong with it, you know. So once you bring it back up to temperature, it's good, you know. So.
One of the things I came across, and I was looking for that information on keeping it, you can freeze it and it won't go solid. And so you can freeze it and then take it out and thaw it. It does not go solid.
The reason for that is we've removed so much of the water out and changed the liquid bricks that I was talking about that it won't freeze at that point. So, yes,
What's your market?
right around here. I sell it at Ozzy's in Old Forge. The tap room and bracket just started doing breakfast again, so they use it there. But I'm a landscaper caretaker by trade around the area, and I sell 200 gallons out of the back door of my truck a year, like nothing.
So that's your goal? I mean, do
To
you meet
sell
your
the
goal?
local, I created a local market, and that's what I want. Until I can get another landowner or two on board to make more, to be able to create a bigger market, I got a good local market, and I'm gonna stick with that for now.
Do most of the diners and restaurants use real maple syrup now? That you're
Now, a lot
aware
of places are offering it, but.
You pay for it, don't you?
Yeah, as, you know.
I mean, separate.
Yeah, oh yeah, they sell it by the ounce. It usually is an ounce or maybe a 3-ounce container, you know, souffle cup with a cap on it.
Yeah,
you know, but,
yeah.
There's others that come in from out of the area that this is a problem for guys like me. We're smaller scale, and we're making just as good a product, if not better than some of the bigger guys, because they're doing so much volume, they just want to give this stuff away. And so the restaurants that's attractive to when they come in and go, well, we'll give you 2 gallons for basically nothing, you know? And so when I go to some of the local places and I'm like, well, here's what I need to get, and they're like, we can't pay that. We got a guy coming from over there, he's willing to do it for half. I can't beat that. So I stick with my local market, you know, it's good. I have a couple other places that I'd like to put it in, but gotta get it in there, so we'll see. You
Who
was a
does
question-
your packaging?
know. We do, my mom, my sister, we do it all. And then I get whatever packaging you know, my supplier has. I could go and get all this fancy stuff, but for the glass, I like the mason jar because it says crafter. You know, once you start putting it in all the fancy, it says refined factory to me, I don't know. And I like the plastic in the mason jars for now, you know.
Eric, there's a question over there.
Yeah, you used the term brick a couple of times. Is that sort of a density term? It sounds like a historical.
Liquid bricks is liquid density, yes.
Okay, so that sounds like it has an historical origin, bricks. Here's the number of bricks for such and such.
It's, I guess the origin is the finished product of the syrup.
Okay.
And I don't
But you've got a
know,
number, the 66.
I don't know where they came to determine that that amount of sugar was the perfect amount, and
Okay.
that's what it needs to be. And as far as the history of that goes,
Okay.
I don't know.
But
Rick,
it's,
you know
it's
anything like
basically a
that, or-
density term.
You know what I mean, as far as the finish end of it?
No, but it's a scale. It's likened to sugar.
Okay, so it could be 50 bricks or 75 bricks, but
Right, but
66 is the magic.
maple
Yes.
syrup that we're making is about 66.9%.
Okay.
So the higher is the higher concentration,
Excuse me.
and, you know, if you start really low, it'd be like 10 or something like that.
Okay.
And when you're finishing like that, on the colors, it's all the same.
Right.
So, you know.
Each
this
color
is
could
a
still be
darker
66.
color.
Right.
It's all 66.9 bricks, even though it's a different color.
Got it.
It's still the same amount of sweetness, sugar.
Okay.
And it's all set.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Eric, that hydrometer that you use,
Hydrometer cup?
yeah, what is that telling you?
That's telling me the 66.9.
Okay,
Because it's, however the floater works in there, it's measuring the same
it's the density of that liquid.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Have you ever tried birch syrup at all?
I haven't because it's
I know, it's a tough one. I
80
know.
gallons to 1.
Yeah.
And there's some up behind me that I could probably make a few gallons, but I think the work involved to get that would be too much. And that's actually after maple. That's more into the middle of April. You know? Yeah.
Eric, maybe I missed because I was signing people in, but how did you learn to do this? That always intrigues me.
YouTube, where else? I've gone on there a pile to like problem solve, of course, but when we were at Ozzy's, a local cop has a friend and he introduced me to the guy and he became fast friends and he's a large producer. They're like 8,000 taps now, something like that, headed for like 12 to 15,000 finished. And I went down and spent a spring or two with him, helping him out. And when you see it on that scale, it's very addicting to a mind like mine because all that fancy equipment that I have, his is all like huge. And to see the volume come in there, they're getting like 1,000 gallons an hour coming in out of the woods. And when you see something like that, it's just like, how does that even happen? But that's it, you know?
So if I could add, can I tell my story
I
though?
told
So-
you, speak up, whatever you
So
want.
to answer your question, I got property over by Big Moose, and so I went outside one day and I said, oh, I have maple trees, can I tap these? And so I learned the whole thing from the internet. And so now we've grown, so I have, where Eric has 1,200 taps,
Yeah.
I have 57. And I have 30 that we use on buckets and 27 that I have tubing that comes off of the hill behind my cabin. And so we make anywhere from 6 to 8 gallons, and it depends on the year. This year we started on March 14th, which was our normal start date by data. But Eric started in February because I also missed some runs. However, I processed 100 more gallons of sap this year than I have in the last 7 years. But the sugar content, which is normally 2.0 for me, was only 1.4, so I actually made less syrup. If I had made 2% off of my 100 extra gallons, I would have made almost 11 to 12 gallons, which we don't do. We just make it and give it away. So
I don't even do that. I end up with like a 65 to 1. 65 gallons of sap to 1 gallon of syrup when it's all said and done.
right, so for us to gather 80 gallons, so I have an RO, a reverse osmosis machine, and we take it from 1.4 to about 3.8, and then we run it through again and take it up towards 6%. And so we get about 80 gallons on a run. On a run is when you have a couple days of good weather, and then it gets too cold again up here. We take it from 80 to around 20, and where I boil outside on cinder blocks, and we have a setup it's been engineered, because my brother and I were both research kind of chemists. I was a chemistry teacher, my brother was a forensic chemist, so he's more the engineer type. So it's lined with fire bricks, and it's pretty tight, and we can boil off 6 gallons of water an hour, which is pretty good but we also freeze our rear ends off sitting out outside, unless it's a nice day, and we hope it doesn't rain also. So we just, but you know, it's totally different. He gets to be inside and cook out while we sit out underneath the sun. If we get it down to 20, if we get it down to 20 gallons, you can see 6 gallons per hour. We can boil off in 4 or 5 hours. So if the weather's crummy, we just say, well, we'll wait a day. But we can't wait, like Eric didn't mention, but he can't keep his sap concentrated too long or it spoils.
Yeah, you don't hold the
And that's why he said he's got to go, usually they say if you concentrate it, you got to go the next day. So,
My friends actually that are big scale, they have, it's like one of those 1,000-gallon tanks with like an agitator, I guess, inside. It actually moves it. So when they stop producing, if it's at 11 o'clock at night, they'll wait till morning to make the syrup. It actually, there's a paddle in there and it moves it all night long so that there's airflow or whatever going in it so it doesn't spoil. Theirs is actually a refrigerated tank too, so.
So I do calculations, I get down to around 2 gallons, and then my brother and I lift the pan off the fire, don't burn ourselves, we dump it, we filter it, then we take it.
The cheesecloth picture.
No, we don't use cheesecloth. Cheesecloth, most of the sugar sand will go through it. So we take it inside, we boil down to what we call near. So it's not syrup, it's near syrup. And then the next day, or next week or whatever, it goes in the refrigerator, we can boil it off at any time. So as long as we don't turn it up high enough to put sugar on the walls, we boil it really slow, 2 or 3 hours, we get it to the correct bricks with what's called a Murphy cup, which is another way of figuring out the percentage. And then when we're done with that, then we filter, which we've constructed our own filter system that we've done just off the internet and off of our engineering. And we get pretty good syrup, almost virtually clear, almost clear, but we're novices. And then we can it, just like Eric does, and we give it away. So, and we like our syrup. Now, going back to the sugar, I don't know if Eric knows, what's the percentage of your sugar maples? We have a lot of red maples up here.
I only do soft or hard, which is the sugar. But for my system, we want volume. Some people they don't tap soft maple. I tap both because I need as much liquid at the end of the day as I can get.
And that's what we're doing our sugar maples are down along the road, and then anything interior is all what we call red maples. And our flavor's a mixture, and we love our syrup.
So
Eric's will
Rick
taste.
and Bob's his brother, they have more of an old school flavor syrup because they're outside over an open pan. It takes a little longer to finish than mine does. It's not, mine's better, his is better. His is old school, mine's newer technology, and they're both great products. And one of the things, so some of you, I think, have been to Maple Weekends in the spring, maybe, no? Foster's, yes?
Yeah.
So one of the things about Maple Weekends that I love is the first weekend, pretty much everybody that comes the first day has some sort of affiliation with Maple. And it's Bob and Rick size guys. To a couple of years ago, my buddy Pete showed up, and he's large scale. And to have a whole bunch of knowledge in the room from their scale to my scale to large scale, I just think that's a great weekend in anybody's sugar house, whether you're outside under a tarp,
Yeah,
drinking bourbon,
that's
or
what we do.
you know.
Bourbon and maple, bourbon and a little maple on the bottom.
Well, we've tried different kinds of syrup, so Eric hasn't done this yet. So we bought oak sticks that we soaked in bourbon and put them in our jars and then poured the maple syrup on there. So you get a bourbon, we do vanilla, we do cinnamon, and we make sugar. So, and the sugar is, all you do is you just keep heating it.
What's
Up
the
to-
finish on that?
What's that?
Temperature?
About
I was
264.
gonna say 260.
But we
yeah.
make it in a pan. Did you say you're a relative of the Mosers?
I'm not a relative, but I know them personally,
So I
yes.
think they have
They do a bourbon,
they
yeah,
have a
it's very
video
good.
of how to make sugar or something like that. I've
Yeah.
seen his. So
They do a bourbon one
we
too.
put it in a pan, a pint at a time, and we boil it, and then we stir like mad, and it converts itself to sugar. And then we have our own system. And so my brother's wife is a baker. She loves to bake, so she makes a lot of stuff with the maple sugar we make.
Mhm.
We make about 2 pounds, but we're not buying it
It's
for $16
natural
a
sugar,
pound.
it's better for you than the
Oh,
white
it's
cane
great. It's
sugar.
really
Of course it is, yeah, yeah.
How do you decide when to replace your trees? I mean, do you plant? Do you just rely on sapling? What do you do?
No, there's a size limit, which is a maturity level of the tree, and here, 10 to 12, and anything under 10, we don't tap, but we like 12-inch up to 18 to 24. Some of those pictures he had multiple buckets. On my system with vacuum, it doesn't matter if the tree's 3 feet wide, it is 1 tap per tree with vacuum, because you don't need any more. It's already getting what you want out of it, so I have about 1,200 trees tapped. And some of that's on my own property. Brenda is my neighbor. She graciously has allowed me to go up the top corner across her land. And then the town of Inlet, they have a parcel next to me that I'm working with them. And so by doing that, it gives you more options on the trees. You have more to choose from. The trees actually heal themselves every year. Where you drill, they leave a stain in them, and so when we go in to tap next year, you're always looking for the old tap holes, because you don't want to drill in it or anywhere where the stain, and it's typically 1 inch or 2 on either side of that hole, and then it bleeds into the tree, top and bottom, and in that area, it won't put sap off the next year. So you want to identify everything, and there's ways to do it to where the tree is going to stay good forever. The only way the tree's not going to stay good forever is if you drill into the heart of the tree. That's the darkness in the center. That it kills them within a couple years.
So we have a map of which side of the tree we tap. And so every year I move a little bit left or right, and according to my map for that year. The only thing is, when we first started tapping 7 years ago, when we went to take our taps out, there was no snow. When we put the taps in, there was snow. So my brother was like, can you reach that? Because he's too short. So not only are we going around the tree up here, but now, last year, there was no snow, so we're tapping down low. So we're below. There's this, once you put your tap in, Eric was describing, there's unconductive wood. It's about this far above and below, this between my fingers, this much wood, that if you put a hole in there next year, it won't flow. So you move it over and down, so because it tapers. Research will show you the non-conductive wood tapers to a point on each side of the tap hole, and then you move over and down, or however Eric does it. He has his system, I have mine. And you tap it.
What side of the tree does more sap come out of?
Well, that's what they'll say is this, to tap the south, but how long can you tap the south side? And it also depends which side of the hill you're on. Because if you're on a north side of a hill, well, I don't know if the trees are going to get that.
North-facing holes start
sun.
slower in the day.
And so the last few years, because it's been warmer than my first few years, we've tapped to the north because it doesn't get the morning sun. And so we work our way around there. So there's a prescription for how many taps you can put in whatever diameter tree, because just like Eric says, the prescription is don't go below 8 inches. He's deciding 10. When I first started, I actually did a map of all the maple trees that I could tap on my property, and I did a diameter for every tree. And you got to remember, the trees grow every year.
Yeah.
Now I found a maple that I cut down near my cabin. I counted 90 rings. And if you think about, or you go to the museums and you see that this area was completely deforested, then the trees that have grown up are about 90 years old, some of them that have been left. So it's interesting, but yeah.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, as far as the history of how they cut the Adirondacks years ago, with the clear cutting like they did, it's not that long ago, really, 90 years.
90 years.
You know. So, yes.
So as the trees age and get too big, you can probably switch your tap to a new tree that's come up and gotten big enough.
Yeah, I actually, every year I hook other stuff up, I'll be like in the woods working, I'm like, how did I miss that tree?
Oh, that's
like
a
right
good
there.
right.
It probably wasn't mature when I was in here putting the tubing in.
Right.
4 or 5 years ago, whatever.
Nice.
Yes.
You said you got 65-to-1 ratio?
Yeah.
How do these guys, and I've seen it all over, get 40-45-to-1? I never could.
Well, it's the sugar coming in, and they say a south-facing hill with the sunlight, the sun, it's the ruler too, I guess.
50-to-1 maybe.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
I keep really good records of percentages.
Yeah.
And in the last 7 years, we've gone from, back in Big Moose, we were averaging 2.2, 2.1, 2.2,
Yeah.
2, and then 1.7, 1.8, and this year 1.4 something. That's what our average was. So as that percentage goes down, you're right, it takes more gallons to make your syrup, to make a gallon of syrup. And so 65 is
And like the
down.
last week of the season, I was like at 1.1%. Some people wouldn't even mess with that. But because of the technology with the reverse osmosis machine, you hook it up, you let it do its job, and it gives you some to boil. You might not make 25 or 30 gallons, you might only get 15, but because of that technology, even though the sugar's lower, you can still make a good product on less sap, but it's not ideal. And then it gets to be 0.8, I'm done. I've had enough at that point.
Yeah, it just depends. Mother Nature makes the decision.
I had the first day, I had 2.8 the first day this year, and I had to rub my eyes because I couldn't believe what the hydrometer said. And of course, the next day it was 2.1, so it goes that fast, you know. Well, anybody else?
I'm gonna bother you again, unless someone else. Our maples in, I live in Rochester, our Norwich maples get a disease. Do any of these trees, are they susceptible?
some years
Do you
they get
spray?
like a
Are you
blight.
do you have to spray?
I'm not big enough to pay for that, but
Yeah.
I do know.
But you get a disease?
Was it like 6 or 7 years ago? Did you end up having it up there?
No.
There was a blight that went through the
blight.
Adirondacks, and it was like, it's like a mold, like we get
Yeah.
on tomatoes or
Right,
anything.
uh-huh.
And it did something to the trees where they recommended, I wasn't tapping at the time. But they recommend you don't tap, and I don't know
Okay.
what the reason, but yeah, there's things.
Makes
And then,
sense. Uh-huh.
what are is it the tent caterpillars that
Oh,
defoliate?
yeah.
They're horrible on a sugar bush because they'll kill the tree defoliating it so fast. So I actually have friends over at, do you know the Duflos over in Lewis County?
Yep.
So Jeff, Brittany's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Brittany.
They get hired, they spray chemicals aerial with an airplane for,
Yep.
for farmers, for maple, for bugs. They
They
go to
were really
Vermont for
green.
like 3 weeks every summer and they just spray maple farms over there.
Yeah, I didn't realize they did that. I know he
Yeah.
has a little airport there in Bremen.
Yeah. That's what they do out of there,
Yeah.
so. All kinds of levels. That it? You got anything else, Jim?
That's good.
Thank you very much. I'll ask you later, I'll ask you.
All right.
I'm sitting back, let me move, I'm sitting.